are getting you those pictures on the broadcast. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, they shook hands on the sidelines of the climate talks. This was the story that we got you here first on India Today. Raj Chingappa, the Group Editorial Director, India Today, his sources told him that of the 150 odd heads of state and government who would be meeting in Paris, there is a quick pull aside that has been planned for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Was something more than just a handshake expected from this meeting? Indications were no. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wanted to focus only on climate and whatever conversation between India and Pakistan. And that's the first picture we get you. Prime Minister Narendra Modi warmly shaking hands with Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And India Today Group's editorial director Raj Chingappa joins me on the broadcast. Raj, take it away. What happened?
Well, actually, I've just arrived there at COP21. The Prime Minister went in much earlier. And essentially, as I mentioned earlier, this was just a handshake, but there could be pull-asides later with all the leaders. The inaugural ceremony is just on. All the world leaders are there. It is a sign that there is a bit of bonhomie, but whether that will lead to any breakthrough in talks, yet to be seen.
Okay, so this was just a handshake, but your sources, Raj, are they indicating that there could be something more than just a handshake? And if so, on what issues, apart from climate or just climate?
I know everybody would like to know the cricket question, Gaurav, but I think essentially what they're going to do here is talk a lot on climate. With the Nawaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, anything could be spoken. But they're saying certainly there'll be push-asides with 20 leaders, and they didn't rule out having one with Nawaz Sharif. Right now, there's not much more we can say.
Okay. Stay with me for a moment, sir. I also want to bring in Smita Sharma. Smita, your sources in the Ministry of External Affairs and the Prime Minister's office, have they indicated anything? Anything that India wants to convey to Pakistan?
Well, you know, Gaurav, I spoke to this top diplomatic source who is currently in Paris, and he clearly told me that there is going to be no decision on cricket that is going to come in from Paris. As Raj was mentioning, this is actually a handshake that has happened between Nawaz Sharif and Narendra Modi. Will that pull aside happen or not is something we'll have to wait and watch. But also remember, Narendra Modi, before flying off from India, mentioned in his speech that how, in fact, in his Mann Ki Baat, the broadcast yesterday, that how he had actually spoken to Nawaz Sharif as well, and the SARC satellite that India is wanting to launch more in the context of climate change. That is something that India is pushing for, and that might just crop up as a part of a conversation if the two leaders eventually do a pull aside of sorts. But clearly, in terms of cricket, I can stick my neck out in here and say that there is going to be no resumption of cricketing ties, at least till this year end, till December 2015.
Okay, and as Boria Majumdar was telling us a short while back, there is no window till August, September next year for India-Pakistan cricket. But Raj, can this be described as perhaps an icebreaker between India and Pakistan, if at all?
Well, everybody would like that to happen, I think, out here. But too early. There's certainly, wanting to talk at some point. But as India has laid some of the ground lines, and maybe Smita Sharma's, information and sources about cricket may be accurate. But yet to be seen. With India-Pakistan, you never rule out anything. So they're always full of surprises. And best to wait till the leaders actually confer and get a better sense in a couple of hours over here.
As far as environment is concerned, one is that SARC satellite that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been pushing. In fact, government officials of all the SAARC countries have already had their meeting in New Delhi. What's that big takeaway that's expected as far as India, Pakistan and environment are concerned, Raj?
Look, this is a global climate change summit. India and Pakistan are one of the 196 countries. Our concerns with regard to climate change are almost similar. We stay in the same geographical region. If climate change is going to impact us, it will start having its, effects on Pakistan as well. So on this, we are on common ground. I mean, there's no differences in our stand when we go as a joint group, as part of G77, as to what the rich nations or the developed nations have to do. Essentially, this summit is all about getting commitments from them to reduce the intensity, vacate certain carbon space for us, because we are on a growth path. Second, we would say we want the technology. If you want us to move toward renewables, then sell us the technology cheap. We're most willing to go there. And third, of course, for God's sake, give us the finance. You've been saying that for a while. You haven't really given us that. So I think there are three major points that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi would say when he addresses the COP summit a little while from now. And there are two other meetings where he inaugurates the International Global Solar Alliance with President Hollande, and then has an innovation summit. And all these three, India is on top of the table.
Oh, absolutely. Climate justice. And Raj, let's just take this one by one. The Prime Minister talking about climate justice. For 200 years, it's the industrialized nations that polluted the environment. They should pay more. They should do more. What progress can India actually expect on climate justice?
Look, this has been a close to 20-year question ever since Kyoto Protocol came, and developed nations said that they would take on legally binding commitments. That was Kyoto Protocol all about. And there was this huge principle of common but differentiated responsibility. The developing countries would work towards reducing their carbon intensity, but there was no binding commitments. Now what you're seeing today is a negotiation of the extension of the Kyoto Protocol, but in a completely diluted form. Because what we're going to hear in a couple of hours is the formal speeches of the leaders emphasizing what their voluntary commitments are. These are so far not legally binding. There will be negotiations to do a 5-year review. Whether that would be legally binding, whether that would bring in that urgency that is required, is to be seen.
Okay. Smita, the Prime Minister's initiative, the 100+ solar-powered nations, the solar energy initiative, that is something that India is very excited about. And as Raj Chingappa said, we are at the top table on this. How does India intend to push this forward?
You know, this is going to be an initiative which will be launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the French President François Hollande in a short while from now, to be hosted by the US. Now, remember, Prime Minister Modi, during that speech in the United Nations, to, of course, his recent broadcasts, has been stressing on climate justice, on conservation of nature. He has been citing how India, in terms of its spiritual legacy, is used to the idea of conservation of nature, and also fighting for the rights of the developing nations, really, because it's unfair to be expecting that the developing nations can simply let go of their industrialization compulsions. I was here at the French embassy. I was just speaking to the French ambassador François Richier, in fact, and he did say that India has a very crucial spot on the high table, because while these countries are aiming at trying to control temperatures by 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, so far all the INDCs that have been stated by all the countries, interestingly, Pakistan actually did not submit its INDCs by that stated timeline, which India got extended till 2nd of October. But, so far they add up to 2.7 degrees of temperature control. But at the same time, you need to understand that the developing countries will need resources. Solar energy is something which, of course, can be harnessed, especially for countries like India. And that is how the focus is going to be, that even as we are looking at renewables, while we want to move away, of course, from fossil fuels. But Prakash Javadekar there in Paris saying that, yes, the Western countries and the developed countries will have to create more carbon space for the developing nations instead of trying to,
and the West will have to pay for this. Spot on there, Smita. Raj, closing comments as we talk of this mission innovation, and this is where you have the United States, you have China, you have India at the global high table. Take us through how this mission innovation will be taken forward.
Well, essentially, it was Prime Minister Modi's idea. It's a lot to do with technology. At the end of the day, when we are saying that, we must mend our ways, the only way we can mend our ways in terms of is reducing the carbon intensity, which is essentially, reducing how much fossil fuel we're using. So India is going to say, look, if you're going to do this, solar is a great example of doing it. That is why the Solar Alliance is, because currently solar prices, particularly the ones that have the photovoltaic and others, competitive. But they're far, far more expensive than coal. So we would continue to use coal, but if we have to move towards solar, then the prices have to drop. And that means the prices of technology and the efficiency levels as well. That is why India is pushing for the International Solar Alliance, because by doing that, we get a huge ring of countries, 110 of them. That creates the demand for big companies to say, all right, we can manufacture economies of scale,
Yes.
and you could send prices of solar plants plummeting to what coal is, and that will be the great substitution. But don't forget, we'll still have to use coal in India, because there's, without doubt, our requirements are enormous. We are not the world's worst polluter. China, USA are. We are, in fact, 1/3 of the world average. When we say we're the 4th largest carbon emitter, but when you look at the ratios, we are barely 6 to 7% of the total. The big three combined are over
Yes.
54%. And therefore, India's got every right to ask that the polluter must pay and insist
Okay.
that technology and finance must be given
Okay.
freely and without all these carping that goes on at these summits.